So, what I'd like to do right now is go through 3 different ways of looking at this issue of creation, just to sort of give the background to this. If you read very simply the verses of the Torah tells us exactly how many years are from the time of Adam Rishon until Noah, and from Noah until Avraham, and so on. You calculate the years. Basically now we're in the year 5772, and evolution, or generally what's accepted today in modern science, is that the world existed for millions, possibly billions of years, and that live creatures were around way, way, way before 5,772 years ago. So I'm going to take a look here at 3 different ways of looking at it. To be honest, the first 2 I'm already telling you at the onset, I don't identify with them, but I think it's important to see them. And my focus will, in the end, be on the last opinion that I will show. So, source number 2 here, from what's called the Igrot HaKodesh, the letters that were written by the last Lubavitcher Rebbe. Would anybody care to read the English for us? You can follow the Hebrew, it's even better, but what we'll read out loud is the English. Anybody?
Also, the plan of Babel were found in no way different from the earth is more ancient than the existence for the following reasons.
Okay, so notice just what he's talking about. He's talking about fossils, and what he's saying is that fossils do not prove that the world is older than we'll see. He quotes the exact year that this was written, which was 1962. In Jewish years, that's 5722. So he claims that fossils are not a proof of the age of the world. So please, Gabrielle.
In the light of the fact there are certain conditions that existed during the prehistoric era that are unknown to us, such as the atmospheric pressure, temperature, radioactivity, unknown catalysts, etc., as was mentioned above. These conditions that may have caused processes to occur in a totally different manner and at a different speed than we are accustomed to today. We cannot exclude the option that dinosaurs existed 5,723 years ago and were fossilized through tremendous catalytic events that took fewer years than we may think. This can be true because we do not have the appropriate tools to measure processes in these unknown conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. So does anybody care to sort of summarize in one sentence by definition? What is the Lubavitcher Rebbe telling us here as far as we see proof, we see fossils, the way, I should have said the background. I don't know what they do today, but at the time that the Rebbe was writing this letter, so the common method to check this was with C14, which is basically checking the half-life of a material, and you see the process with which it decomposes, and then you can understand from that how long the material has been around. So basically, what is he saying? Why is that not a valid method? Why is that not proof that the material has existed for these tens of thousands of years, or probably hundreds of thousands of years? You want to summarize, please?
Make a fossil that appears just as old as that.
That's right, but that's B. I don't know if you read it, but that's going to be B. Okay, so if you already mentioned that, let's just read number B, and we'll go back to A. So you want to read it for us? Okay, so this is the second. Okay, you know what? I'll just summarize the first reason that he says that this method is not valid is because we're assuming that the speed with which the processes happened in the past are the same speed with which it happens today, right? That's our assumption. You see, I don't know, like let's say inertia or like any force you see in the world, you assume that the same laws that you see today were the exact same laws that were in the past. But saying this is not taking into consideration the different conditions that may have been in the past. The atmosphere, the materials in the area, radioactivity, and so on. And therefore, it could be that the process in the past was tens of times, or hundreds of times, or who knows how many times faster. And therefore, when you see something which should have taken hundreds of thousands of years, really, in essence, just took a few thousand years. But it looks like it took so many years because the speed of the process has changed. Okay, did anybody understand it differently? I'd be happy to argue if I understood it incorrectly. That's my understanding of the first explanation of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Second explanation, as Karen said. Okay, so anybody care to read B?
Even if we were to assume the length of time that the world exists according to Torah is too short for fossilization to occur, although I cannot see how this can be confirmed, still, we can easily accept the opinion that God created the fossils as they are. Also, he may have created bones and skeletons for reasons known to him. Just as he can create live organisms, also human beings and complete products such as oil, coal, and diamonds without any evolutionary process.
Thank you very much, Jules. Okay, to me, this is a little hard to accept, but obviously it is a possibility. Okay, God is omnipotent, but it does seem a little weird, but it could be. Okay, so basically, in like one sentence, what exactly is his method of dealing with this apparent problem that the Torah tells us that the world is a few thousand years and science, tries to prove that it's more? Please.
God can do whatever he wants. So.
Right. Okay.
Basically.
Okay. Very good. So, I like that. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. That basically, we're looking at science and saying, well, there's these sets of rules and they have sort of like, a life of their own. And then he's like saying, wait, no, God is above this and he could have created either the rules in a certain way or the actual material in a certain way. Okay. You wanted to say something?
Just that he's completely calling into question our quantitative abilities, which is exactly what was said.
Okay, but it's still, I like what you're saying because it's like a different focus a little bit. It's like, it's putting a focus on our, our limitations of fully understanding the world. Like, we really feel, definitely today, in an era of technology and such advancement, so sometimes we do get the sense that we can manipulate knowledge in such amazing ways, so we really feel, in a sense, above nature. But he's reminding us that that's not definitely the case. And although, as I said in the beginning, I personally don't identify with this opinion as much as I do with opinions that we'll see in a minute, I do think that it is a very important opinion to take into consideration and think about, because it reminds us how humble we should be when coming to deal with science and understanding what's going around us. So I had a discussion with Josh Reback about this. So the example that he gave me was that he wasn't sure if this is a case that actually happened or not. But I think basically we all know from biology in high school, two parents who have light eyes cannot have a child with dark eyes, right? That's what I studied in biology. That's, I think, what everybody, just in a second, I'm going to say something about that. So what happens is, it's very rare, but the truth is that this could happen. So again, we don't know if this is a case that actually happened or not, but this guy filed for divorce and, sued his wife like crazy because they both had light eyes and the child had brown eyes. So, you know, obviously he claimed that the child is not from me. And that's not taking into consideration mutations that can happen in genes. That's not taking into consideration genes that can be turned off. I'm sure there's a better term. Inactive. What is it called?
Epigenetics.
Epigenetics?
So the father had, hypothetically, had his, you know, although, you know, in this metaphorical case, dark eyes methylated or turned off, then epigenetics would say that the kid could lose that methylation through
Right.
conception and then be born with dark eyes.
Right, very good. Okay, so it's taken into consideration, hey, we know about genes. That's like amazing, it's unbelievable. But there are other forces that work together with it that possibly we don't fully understand at this point, and therefore different things can happen. So that's just like an example, you know, in modern days of how tricky these things can be. So I think that it's not right to come and say, oh, you know, automatically I don't agree with this. And even if, bottom line, there will be things that possibly can be more convincing, it doesn't mean that the basic idea is there. Don't be fooled into thinking that we have this ability to just fully understand reality and that's it. You know, that's 100% the truth, and anything that collides with that is obviously not true. Okay, so we'll go to the next opinion, which is basically somewhat in between the first opinion and the last opinion. So just a little background about this. Rabbi Israel Lifshitz wrote a commentary on Mishnah called Tiferet Yisrael, and he was a leader of a congregation. And in 1842, he gave a speech that he ended up writing down and printing at the end of Seder Nezikin of the Mishnah. And here he really discusses certain scientific advancements that occurred in his time. And one of the main things that was happening in that time, they were discovering more and more fossils and bones of prehistoric animals. So, you know, it was very hard to decide which pieces I'm going to cut out. So, you know, this is really the piece that I decided to choose, but there's much more. And notice at the end, there's just, the last piece is not that important, but I couldn't resist. So please, if anybody can read us the third source in English, please, thank you.
In order to give us a full perspective on this issue, i.e. the age of the world, Rabbeinu Bechai revealed deep secret in the Kabbalism perspective, however, on the voice the land shall observe a Sabbath worship. This voice hints toward the marvelous secret according to which the world will be built and destroyed 7 times. This is analogous to the 7th cycle of Shemitah that is in Yovel, and these put together of 4,900 years.
Is it 40,900 or 40?
Yeah, it's 49,000. I missed the 0.
49,000 years.
Yeah.
And we also know gigantic boats were discovered in the depth of the earth around the land of Baltimore in America, and they have called these animals mammoths.
If you want to look at the Hebrew, you can see here, Bib Baltimore, last word is
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Right.
Then
I wouldn't have the confidence to translate that as Baltimore if it didn't say Baltimore be'America.
Right.
Okay, I'm like, okay, you know, it's just so much they can hand over to you. So that part is like less relevant to you know, the main thing that he's saying, but I just thought it's pretty cool that we're learning the source here in Baltimore, and he's referencing mammoths that were discovered in his time in Baltimore. I had to cut out, again, for lack of space, you see it's already 2 pages, but he describes exactly their dimensions and everything. It's very interesting. So basically, what is his way of dealing with this? Who does he bring in to take care of the problem? He's bringing the Kabbalists. Okay, he's saying Kabbalah. Okay, that's automatically when we say that.
He's still not really solving the problem because he's saying 49,000 years.
Right.
That's not a lot of time.
Right, okay, very good. So that's why I said that this is sort of like an opinion which is in between. Because what he's doing, he's basically still going along with the method that we can calculate the even, approximate age of the world. And let's bring some sources to show that the calculation that we usually accept is not the only possible calculation. So we'll bring in the Kabbalists. Automatically, when we hear Kabbalah, something like shuts down in our brain and says, okay, that's something that I don't really fully understand. It's, if you say so, I believe you. And, okay, so he reaches 49,000 years. The fact is that in his time already, when they saw these mammoths, I think they were claiming like 150,000 years. Something like that. By the way, I was just reminded today, Heshiraskis told me something interesting, that somebody brought up the question when they discovered the woolly mammoth in Siberia. That happens to be the best preserved mammoth around. So it had meat that could have been edible. So he said to me that it depends which approach of the Lubavitcher Rebbe you take. If you take the approach that that basically God created it as is, so it could be that that's kosher, because what's not kosher is animals that were created in the way we know today. Different animals, and it wouldn't be edible. What's right?
It probably was.
Marstein, very good. I can't imagine, the one yuppie who has like, $3 million for a mammoth steak, and just to show off the whole world that happens to be Marstein. But it's a good point. So you're not Matir. Okay, I'll try to refrain. What about the kalim that it was cooked in? Okay. Anyway, so.
So it would have been wood, wouldn't it? I don't think they had a metal kiln at that point in time.
Excuse me?
Okay, so look, the truth is that although we feel that Rabbi Lifshitz here doesn't really fully take care of the problem, he's sort of turned, okay, so it's not just 57,000 years, 5,700 years, it's 49,000 years, but still that's not sufficient for, for science today. Still, we have to understand that in his time, for a rabbi to get up and say these things, definitely like in a big talk in front of a congregation, that was like revolutionary. It's pretty amazing stuff that he's willing to take the step and say, you know what? We don't really fully understand what the Torah is telling us, and it's all a mystery, and therefore don't take these years to be literally the age of the world, rather the timeline that we happen to calculate. Now,
Can I just mention something interesting? So I read through your source and I noticed, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but Gerald Schroeder came up with this theory about how when the world was created, time moved a lot slower.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole process just took a lot longer, and that's why a lot of these things were able to happen in a short period.
What's his name again?
Gerard Schroeder, I think. I can look it up for you. Gerard.
Yeah, if you could just send me the name, that's great.
But I have to
So the question is like, what is a day? How long is a day?
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
Yes, one of God's days is 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Very good.
So that moves as Yom, in that sense, should be translated not as day, but as time.
What is that? Okay. Very good. Very good. Thanks. Okay, so I'd like to, conclude with the opinion that I personally buy into most, which is Rav Kook. But still, interestingly, brought here two sources, and we see, in a certain sense, a progression and evolution in Rav Kook's opinion. Okay, so in 1905, we have the source number 4, where he writes the following letter. If anybody would care to read it to us, thank you.
Even if it became clear to us that the world has developed by way of the evolution of species, still there is no discrepancy with the Torah. We count the years in accordance to the simple meaning of the verses of the Torah, which is more relevant to us than any historical knowledge, which has little to do with us. And the Torah is surely ambiguous in regards to creation, and has spoken with hints and analogies. As everyone knows, that the story of creation is included in the secrets of the Torah. And the most important lesson is the knowledge that assists us in the knowledge of God and in leading a truly moral life.
Okay, thank you very much. So in other words, anybody care in other words?
I mean, I think, but I'm not sure that, you know, regardless of how the world was created, the only part that is relevant to us starts 5,722 years ago.
Very good. Okay, I agree with you, and I think that that's like an outcome of what he's saying. But I think basically the fundamental issue that he is stating here is that the Torah is not telling us scientific information. That's not the point of the Torah. It may seem to you that way sometimes because it's giving you details, it's giving you information, but that's not the point of the Torah. Science deals with different questions than the Torah does. So I think that at this point, in 1905, when Rav Kook is writing this, he is very close in touch with Rabbi Lifshitz that we read before. He's saying basically, look, the Torah it's all secrets. It's not really to be understood in the simple sense, and therefore there's no problem if science finds a certain finding. Which, by the way, we have to all the time stress that this whole thing, it's all theories, but it could be very well based theories. That's fine. But the fact is that, you know, theories come and go, as popular as they may be. But I think that still is an important disclaimer to mention. But still, he brings in secrets, as I mentioned, Kabbalists, but I think he's very close in touch with Rabbi Lifshitz. But notice what happens. I don't know exactly what year this was written in, but I'm sure that it was written later on, and I'll tell you in a few minutes how I know that. But this book was published in 1938, which is after Rav Kook died. Bo'ot HaKodesh, Part 2. So if anybody cares to read, source number 5. And try to notice the sort of change in attitude, okay? If in this letter that we just read now, Rav Kook is saying, look, it's possible to explain it this way. He seems sort of like neutral, right? He's not telling you, oh, sure, you know, this is obviously the explanation. He's saying, look, if you were to prove to me in some way that the world did exist for millions and billions of years, so this is what I would answer. Notice what happens here in source number 5. Thanks.
The theory of evolution, which is now common in the world, fit the sequence of Kabbalah much more than all other philosophical teaching. Development, which takes a track that leads to elevation, it will give us the basis for optimism in the world. So how can we be in despair when we see that everything develops and elevates?
Thank you very much. I have to keep on, I hate that this sounds apologetic, but it's extremely hard to translate Rav Kook, but I think that the basic idea can be understood. What is the word that pops out to you when, let's say you didn't understand a single word here? What's the word that comes up when you read this?
Development.
Development, okay. I was thinking something else, but yeah, okay. What else? No, go ahead. I mean, that's fine.
Like he primarily sees evolution as a story of development through which simple organisms became something much larger, much more significant, much more spiritually significant.
Right. Okay.
And so he takes evolution as like a sort of like a parable for a world like moving towards redemption.
Right. Okay. And not just as a parable, but in a sense, I think as proof.
True.
As almost scientific proof for optimism. That was the word that pops out to me. I don't know, everyone's like entitled to their own thing, but it's sort of like, you know, if I were to define what is the word that comes out in this passage, it's optimism. This is unbelievable. He's saying, look at this. Evolution gives us the feeling that there is progression in the world. So right now, the world is as it is, but it will progress morally, ethically, spiritually. It's not just physically, but this is just like an example of the way things work. Please.
So the problem is that I think now, it might have been different in those, actually it was different, but now the theory of evolution is that there is no progression and there are no like advanced or primitive species.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that organisms adapt, or that the environment shapes how organisms are changing.
Okay. So, but still, I mean, you know what? He may have said something else about that. I don't know. But like, I'm just sort of trying to put words in his mouth. Like, let's say I'm taking that idea and I'm saying that's so unbelievable because you're in this world and you think, like, oh my goodness, I don't have the tools with which I can really make progress, with which I can survive, not just physically, but, you know, emotionally, spiritually, and so on. And then I'm saying, wait, look at nature. Nature has the innate ability to develop whatever tools it needs because of, you know, the way you're describing, you know, evolution as it's understood today. So I'm saying whatever way you take it, the beautiful thing here that I feel that Rav Kook is teaching us is don't be afraid of these things. Okay, you're not going to have a problem with it because, okay, the Torah is telling us secrets. We don't really fully understand exactly what a day in Bereshit means. What, it took God 6 days to create the world? What exactly does that mean? What does that mean, 6 days? It can't be 6 days that we understand as 24 hours. It's simply impossible. So that's not going to be the problem. So instead of just dealing with that, grasp this concept and hold it closely to you and think, what does it mean to me? So in that time, what evolution meant was progression. So he's saying, okay, so this shows us that the world progresses. If we understand evolution differently today, so think deeply and try to understand what exactly does that mean. Okay, that nature has the ability to grow the tools that it needs. Okay, so what does that mean to me spiritually today? That's the beautiful thing about it, is that he's saying, I'm not afraid of this. I'm willing to take this and see what I can do with this, how this can help me in present day. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what is this paragraph in the context of? Was he like talking about evolution? Was he talking about spirituality? So
that's a very good question. This happens to be the very beginning of a chapter that is called Hitalut HaOlam, which is, you know, the elevation of the world, and this is the opening passage to that piece. Please just, I'd be very happy to speak with anybody right after. I just would like to quickly see the last source to sort of be able to quickly sum it up. And again, anybody who would like to discuss this further, I'd be very happy to do so right after. So source number 6. Okay, so I'll read it because I want to be loud and clear. I really feel that this is the most important source that I was trying to, you know, get to up until now. What prevents us from setting the masses straight on the issue of evolution is not the burden of explaining how the verses of the Torah or other traditional texts can be interpreted as to fit the theory of evolution, for this is an easy task. Everyone knows that these issues are controlled by analogies, riddles, and hints. So basically he starts off with what he said in the letter from 1905, that don't worry about that. That is not the problem. The way to interpret the verses, that is not the issue. That is not the reason that so many people have a problem accepting evolution as a true concept. What is the problem? So look at the middle passage here. The problem is that it is spiritually hard for people to accept this idea because they have become accustomed to thinking in terms of instant changes and skipping crucial steps. This prevents people from thinking about that which is distant from them, that is evolution, now that they are confronted by the new notion of evolution. So basically what happens, people are used to the idea that things should happen instantly, that spiritual processes should happen instantly. And Rav Kook didn't say this, but some of his students sort of like took this a step forward and they said, wait, you know, this whole argument about religious Zionism, which basically, what is religious Zionism? It's claiming that the process that we believe that will happen, that the Mashiach will come and everybody will come back to Israel and we'll have the Beit HaMikdash and so on, that's not going to happen just boom, like one instant. Rather, it's a process that happens over many years and over time. And not only that, we have to put in our own effort. So the thing is that people are used to thinking that, wait, you know, God could do anything, so he could just snap his fingers and do it. So why would he create this whole thing that has to take millions of years? What is the point of that? Forget what is the point of that, because who knows? Is it any easier to say that God created woolly mammoths and buried them under the Siberian snows? Is that any more rational than saying that God created these organisms that went on and developed? Is it any more problematic to say that God took apes and put a neshama into whatever organism developed from these apes than to say that God picked up soil and put a neshama into that? Does that change anything ethically? So people are not accustomed to thinking in that way, that God can work in a process. But hey, it doesn't mean that that's not true. It doesn't mean that the way we grasp God and the way he should work really is that way. And I just would like to conclude with something that I'm so excited that I was able to do. This morning, I emailed one of the greatest experts on Rav Kook of this generation, who is Rav Yoel Ben-Nun. And I went right before the talk right now to check if he answered, and amazingly he answered me today. What I asked him, one of the things that I heard in different classes that I took with him, is he explained the background, the historical background that caused Rav Kook to take different stances on different issues at different times. So I asked him basically what happened between 1905 and whenever later on that he wrote this piece in Orot HaKodesh. In the beginning, he's being sort of like apologetic and saying, you know what, if you really prove to me that this is correct, so I would answer you this, up until the point where he's saying, you know, the problem with the masses is, you know, and then explains it, what's going on here. So he said a few things, and I'll just tell you one of them because I think that this is really the most important, the most relevant to us today. Rav Kook wrote this after the First World War. And as opposed to, you know, many people who looked at the World War and, you know, it was called the war of all wars. It was like nobody could imagine that any greater atrocity can occur. So he looked at it in a very optimistic way, and he said, look at all these things that are coming out after the war that really the world is making some kind of moral progress. And Rav Kook looked at these historical events, and he was very optimistic about it. He said, right, there was tremendous bloodshed here, and it was an awful thing, but the world is making moral progress. And it's amazing how everything connects, because I heard today on the radio that Angela Merkel, the head of state of Germany, said that the current situation in Europe, the financial situation, is the greatest problem that they've had ever since the World War, the Second World War. And so they were talking about it, that it's amazing, you know, if this had happened many years ago, it could have been that this would have been a civil war, like, you know, long ago. But now, how are we dealing with this? We're dealing with it in a civil way. It's not that it's easy, but we're getting around meeting tables and trying to talk it out. That's amazing. That's an amazing progress that the world has made. So, you know, there are terrible things that are still going on in the world, but if you take a look, compared to ancient times, the amount of blood that was shed all over the place, compared to today, the world is really, in fact, making progress. So, to sort of sum it up, we saw a number of different opinions. And to me, the most important thing, whatever opinion you take, whatever your idea is about this, is to develop a more complex way of thinking of things, both a complex way of thinking about science, both a complex way of dealing with Torah, opening up your mind and really trying to figure out what are those things that are set in stone that, you know, otherwise you really can't say anything against them. And not only that, whatever concept you encounter, try to really think, what does that mean to me spiritually? What exactly can I take from this notion to my own life and probably, you know, generally to my outlook at the world, and history, and humanity as a whole? Thank you very much. Okay, so anybody who would like to discuss, I'd be